Greetings on this Feast of the Epiphany from Harare, Zimbabwe, a country that's been experiencing tremendous historic change. This feast, a missionary feast, is also about change, personal change, as well as social transformation. Epiphany has special meaning for me because it's also the foundation day for my religious congregation, the Maryknoll Sisters of St. Dominic. On January 6, 1912, 3 women arrived at the train station in Hawthorne, New York, to assist the new mission movement that would become Maryknoll. These 3 wise women, as we know them, followed their star and became the nucleus of the first community of women religious missionaries founded in the United States. That journey profoundly changed their lives, and that change reached out to thousands of people over the next 100 years in the mission outreach of Maryknoll. In today's gospel, we read of wise men who followed their star to the Christ child in Bethlehem. We don't know much about them. We read they came from the east and they brought precious gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But we don't really know how far they traveled or the dangers they met on the way. We can imagine, though, the courage it took for them to leave their homes, their families, to travel to an unknown destination, guided only by a star. And can you imagine what happened when they went back from that journey and told their friends, their relatives, their community, their fellow astrologers about what they had experienced on that journey and at the end of the journey in Bethlehem? I think they were the first missionaries. Like these wise men, and like the wise women of Maryknoll and hundreds who followed after them, each of us has a star to follow that will bring us to proclaim the good news of a God who became one with us, a God of all peoples, nationalities, races, genders, a God who makes all things new. Bishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu of South Africa, speaking of the missionary vocation of all Christians, describes it as an encounter with the God of the poor and the vulnerable, the God of the sick and the lame, the God of the stranger and despised, the God of the human family and the whole of creation. This encounter changes us as well as the people we meet. The next part of today's reading is more ominous. We are told that the wise men returned by a different route because Herod, the king appointed by the Romans, was seeking the Christ child, not to worship him, but to kill him. Herod, like so many rulers then and now, feared losing his wealth and power. Joseph, warned in a dream by an angel, took Mary and the Christ child and fled into Egypt to save his life. Like migrants today, they lived for many years in a foreign land. We see such scenes daily on our TVs, on our phones. We see parents and children fleeing war in Yemen, Syria, South Sudan, Somalia. We see refugees, migrants, risking drowning in the Mediterranean, traveling on rubber boats and overcrowded wooden boats, and risk being sold as slaves in Libya, all for freedom, all to save their lives. The first reading from Isaiah tells us that darkness covers the earth. We see that darkness around us. I don't need to elaborate and go into all the manifestations of darkness in the world today. Rather, I'd like to focus on the next part of the reading from Isaiah. Isaiah tells us, "The Lord's light shines on them, and other nations shall walk by their light." Each one of us is meant to be a bearer of that light. We're meant to shine our light into the darkness of the world. We're meant to be signs of hope and healing in a fractured, divided, violent world. Yes, we can bring change, no matter how difficult or impossible the situation seems. I've seen it happen right here in Zimbabwe recently, when people brought about a peaceful change together with the army, and they continue to work to bring about a better life for all Zimbabweans. And they used the flag, not a gun, not a drone, not a weapon. The flag was their symbol of liberation. In the words of Gandhi, let us be the change we hope to see in the world. Let us shine our light on the dark corners, whether it be in Zimbabwe, New York, or Alabama. And in the wonderful words of Pope Francis, in the joy of the gospel, Pope Francis gives us all such words of hope. He says, "May the world of our time, which is searching, sometimes with anguish, sometimes with hope, be enabled to receive the good news not from evangelizers who are dejected, discouraged, impatient, or anxious, but from ministers of the gospel whose lives glow with fervor, who have first received the joy of Christ." Happy Feast Day.